Okay, today's topic is off the boat and into the city. Yesterday we talked about how immigrants were coming across from America for or coming across to America for various reasons, and today we're going to be talking about what they found when they got here. Now, for the vast majority of immigrants that were coming over, they were not doctors or lawyers. A lot of these people, if they were doctors and lawyers, they were probably doing really well in the society that they were already in. These people are people that don't have education, don't have skills. They're coming across to America hoping for a better life, and they're going to find that there's only so many jobs to go around as all these immigrants are flooding in all of a sudden in great numbers. And so we look at Eyewitness to History right here. I came to America because I heard the streets were paved with gold. When I got here, I found out three things. First, the streets weren't paved with gold. Second, they weren't paved at all. And third, I was expected to pave them. So a lot of manual labor was being foisted upon these people because they didn't have a lot of skills. Or if they had skills, people didn't want to, they made them not know the language. They had a lot of disadvantages coming to America. And the American dream will be possible, but it won't be instant. Sometimes it takes generations for people to become rich. Their grandchildren may become rich here in America because of what the previous generations did. And I think a lot of these immigrants knew that. But let's talk about what they did find when they first got here. A lot of them didn't speak a word, a lot of them didn't speak a word of English. And this would be a problem. They would rely on relatives, people that had other immigrants that have come over here and learned the language. And so a lot of these people were very dependent on other people just to get through day-to-day activities. Some immigrants were able to take advantage of the cheap farmland in the Midwest. You remember what we talked about last chapter with the Homestead Act. A lot of them were able to go out west, but many more were not able to. And so they started settling in cities on the eastern seaboard. You got New York, Boston, and then Pittsburgh becomes a big immigrant town because of all the industry when steel comes into effect. They did not live in great conditions. You could see here a family living in a ghetto, and that's our first vocabulary word. Let's take a look at ghetto. Ghetto is a poor area of city where people of similar ethnic groups live. So if you go to New York, you'll find Chinatown, Little Italy, all these places where immigrants gathered because they would trust the people that knew their language and knew their culture. They knew that their fellow countrymen are more likely to help them than other people. And they lived in unsafe tenements. That's our second word. Tenements, rundown apartment buildings is a tenement. And if you're not sure what an apartment is, it is a building that has lots of rooms in it. It's almost like a hotel, except they all have facilities to live in, usually a kitchen, shower, bathroom, that sort of thing. And you pay a certain amount of money to live there per month. But there's a person that owns the whole building, and they rent out these rooms, they rent out these apartments so that you can live there. You don't own the apartment, you don't own the land, you don't own the building. You pay a rent to a landlord. And a lot of these places were run down. They couldn't be maintained because the only people living in there were poor people. And the only way that they can survive was to pack in as many people into these apartments as possible. So you would have lots of children sleeping on the floor all over the place, and the adults would actually sleep in shifts. So for instance, if somebody worked in the daytime, they would come in at night and sleep then. They would hook up with somebody that would work at night, so they would sleep during the day, and then they would go out to work, and then the other person comes in after their day shift and sleep at night. And so they would rotate use of the apartment. So there was always somebody in the apartment depending on their work schedule. And that's how people had to do that to survive. because they had very little and their prospects were very bad. But one thing that sort of helped immigrants and didn't help immigrants was urbanization. So urbanization is our final word for today. Urbanization is the process of which many people come to live in cities. So when people leave farms or don't go to farms and instead go into the city to look for work, the type of job that you have in rural communities where you're farming or raising cattle, very different from the jobs you'll find in the city where you're working in a factory, you're working in a shop, you're making things, building things, that sort of thing. And so industries such as steel started coming into effect, making farm equipment. And so places like Pittsburgh with its steel and Chicago with its manufacturing, and then of course the railroad hub to connect everybody, they're able to absorb more immigrants because all the immigrants are basically going to New York, and then they start spreading out in Boston, Pittsburgh, Chicago, where they can find jobs. And so a lot of immigrants go into these cities and make these cities very, very large. Well, the conditions got so bad that this woman here, Jane Addams, starts a settlement house, and they call it Jane Addams and the Hull House. That's very important. Make sure that you know that. What she does is she sets up a place where immigrants can go and figure out how to settle. They would teach their kids they would teach everybody English. They would teach the immigrants' children, give them an education so that they would have skills. The kids would get art, music lessons, English classes, life skill instruction, and a nice place to make friends, which is very important to kids. And so this was a place where immigrants could find some refuge, in that not only will they be given skills and connections so that they can find jobs, but their kids can start learning skills so that they don't have to do the manual labor that the parents have to do because they don't have any skills. It'd be a real shame if you have an immigrant, especially a child that's very intelligent and can do a lot more for themselves and for the country, and instead they're digging ditches somewhere. That would be a terrible waste. So she did such great work helping the immigrants that she was the first American woman to win a Nobel Peace Prize, which is a very prestigious, or at least it used to be a very prestigious award, recognition for somebody that's doing something very extraordinary for the human race. And I'll leave it there. The immigrants are not having a great time of it. Some of them are doing very well, but for the vast majority, they have to live in very tough conditions, and but they're doing it not for themselves necessarily, but for their children, and people like Jane Addams are really making a difference helping them out.